Good evening, everyone, and we are back again. My name is Justin Yard. I'm with the man, the myth, the legend, Daryl Moss, and we are hosting again another show, Black Health. Let's talk about it. All right, we're here with, and I'm terrible with names, anyways, but I'm gonna do my best. Right, Abdul Rahman Muhammad. There we go. All right. He is a savant in the area of mental health. And that's what our topic today is going to be all about mental health. All right. And we have to understand that we talk about the body and different diseases and ailments that we can kind of help change our lifestyle. And a part of our lifestyle is our mental environment, social environment, which affects our mental environment. So he'll be here to be talking more in depth about it. And I just want to start off with a simple question, right? So people can understand the vastness of this. What, and if you could define, what is mental health?
Well, mental health is just the health of your mind, the health of your mind, of your mentality. You know, when you think about mental health, there's so many layers to it. So it's kind of like it's like I gave you a simple answer, but it's a very broad spectrum because we could be talking about something as simple as how you feel today. That's your mental health, right? So the way you feel. And so, but then you could go even deeper. The reason why we have people like myself who have organizations where we focus on mental health is that some people have diagnosis that are like, more than just how I feel today. It's like they consistently feel a certain way, like, so maybe depression, right? So that's something where on an ongoing basis, somebody's feeling a certain way. So mental health is just really, it starts off with feelings, but then as you get deeper into diagnosis, there are some other levels that we could definitely talk about.
All right.
Okay,
And
perfect.
before we get into it, Abdul, if you could take a moment, just tell people who you are, what you do, all that good. Let's get some background before we jump right into the topic. Is that cool?
Sure, yeah.
All right.
As it was said before, my name is Abdul Rahman Muhammad. I'm the executive director of My People Clinical Services and My People Community Services in Hartford, Connecticut. My People Clinical Services is a for-profit organization where we primarily do supportive housing for young adults. We do fatherhood engagement. We do foster care, and we do individual and family therapy. Um, and then My People Community Services is a nonprofit organization that we've been developing over the last few years, where we have a program called the Manhood Tree, where we do a lot of work with men through our fatherhood monologues, our group, and our men's health initiative. And then we have our Honeydew program, where we this is primarily for women, where they come together and they talk about different issues around womanhood. And then we have our Ice Cream for a Dream, which is basically an event we do. We go out into the community, we give out free ice cream for individuals to tell us their dream. And so those are a few of the programs under My People Community Services. So basically, that's what I do in a nutshell.
Okay.
Amazing, amazing. That's a lot. That's a lot. So, in how many years have you been in the area and space of mental health?
Yeah, I've been a social worker for over 20 years. I started My People back in 2005. And so this year we'll be approaching our 17-year anniversary, which is very exciting. We had our 15th anniversary during COVID, so we weren't able to have our huge gala we were planning on having. So we're really moving towards that 20th, which will happen in about 3 years. So we're very excited about that.
Okay.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
What's up? So, from your experience, I mean, I like getting into the whole thing, but I know our Black families have been heavily impacted, but given some of the recent occurrences here in the city of Springfield and things that have been happening across the country, the topic, the theme, the trend now is really Black men and mental health.
Mhm.
Let's talk before we get into the whole thing. Talk a little bit about some My People community. What is it? My People Community Service.
Chronicle, yep.
Talk about some of the activities and events that you do. Let's talk about that first.
Sure.
Because everybody's been talking about mental health. We've had mental health professionals come on in the past. We talked about it from a clinical perspective. But let's talk about how you actually engage people in the community to get them involved in the dialogue.
So one of the things that My People does is, every year we do a Father's Day event, like not a Father's Day, but a fatherhood event. Usually it's in September or August. We call it the Dad Hero Community Day. And on that day, we usually have a bunch of food trucks out there, games for kids, entertainment, all types of stuff. That's one of the events we do. We also, this year, we're going to be really focusing on men's health. We're talking about mental health, but we're going to be doing events really focusing on physical health. More so like last month, we did a panel discussion where we had someone on the panel who had a heart transplant, open heart surgery, someone on the panel who had post-traumatic stress disorder, someone on the panel who had diabetes. And so one of the things that we really want to kind of like put out there in the community, that men need to go get a primary care physician. Men need to go get their colon cancer screening. They need to get their prostate screening, because a lot of these tests that you need to get are like the difference between life and death. And so, like, I was the guy on the panel with the open heart surgery, right? So like 6 months ago, I had open heart surgery, and it was really one of those things where, my doctor and I had it all planned out, but he was telling me that if I actually had a heart attack, you get a 50-50 chance of living if you have a heart attack, right? And so it's like, men are walking around here, and I didn't expect to get open heart surgery. It was like surprising. So there's tons of men out here who are walking around who are like right on the verge of a heart attack, and they don't know because they ain't been in a doctor in 5 years. As we get older, it's so important for us to just be aware of our health. And so that's one of the things that that we're going to be doing all year. We'll just be talking about health. I mentioned the Fatherhood Manor. That's another thing that we do. That's basically about 2 years ago, I contacted a few men and I asked them to write a monologue about being a father or being fathered. And we call that the Fatherhood Monologues. And basically, we have about 20 men who have written monologues, and we do. We've been doing shows all over the place. It's like I'll get 5 or 10 of them anytime. So on February the 10th, we'll be doing a live stream of the Fatherhood Monologues from the Wadsworth in Hartford, Connecticut. That's the Wadsworth is the nation's oldest museum, and so we'll have about 10 men share their fatherhood monologues. February the 10th is my father's birthday, and every year I try to celebrate his birthday by having other men talk about fatherhood, which I think is important. Of course, we also have, like I said, we have those events for women as well, where their topics aren't necessarily health related. It's really just an opportunity for women to talk about, different topics that come to mind. I think the next one that they're going to be doing is called Pretty Girls. It's an event. It's something about pretty girl. It's really, it has a snazzy title. I can't remember right now, but it's snazzy, and it's like the title actually drew me in. It was like Pretty Girls brunch and trap music. So that's the name of the event. But there'll be a bunch of women. Maybe their husbands will come. I mean, I'm gonna go to the brunch, and we'll talk about different issues at that event as well. And so, like, what we try to do as an organization is just be out in the community, and really try to work with our people. One of the things that I was intentional about when I started My People is that I have a love and a care for my people. So when I came up with the name, I knew that our people would understand exactly what I was saying when I said, "Yo, these are my people." And so, like, our whole thing is about uplifting Black people, uplifting people of color, and really helping them get through whatever they're going through.
Okay. Justin, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
And so when you and I think you talked about more of the community the nonprofit organization, in the for-profit, you're doing foster care and things like that. Yep. And so now you're reaching a wide spectrum of ages and things like that. But can you tell me what, and I don't want to say clinically because I don't know if it's a clinical space you're operating in, but like what are you seeing during this time as far as issues when it comes to Black men and mental health?
Yeah, I mean, really, one of the things that we're seeing is, I mean, I'll tell you this. Yesterday, right, I went with a group of men to a high school, and we went into the high school. We brought the kids. It was about 50 young men in the room, and we gave them some pizza and all that stuff. And so I usually don't. I was planning on not talking. I was gonna go because I wanted to be around some good men who were gonna give a positive message to the young people. And so they asked me to open up with a poem, which I was like, oh man, I don't even have the poems in my head like that anymore. But I had a poem in my mind and I did the poem. And the poem, the gist of it was that there's a line in the poem where it says, I could talk about your greatness for hours upon hours and hours. And so usually, you know how when you do poetry, you do the poem, you sit down. And so yesterday, for some reason, I got a feeling from the group that I should ask them a question about the poem. And so the poem is about, you know, how our ancestors were taken from Africa, came to, you know, the United States. We were slaves. But even with all of that, we are still great, right? That's basically the gist of it. And so what happened was these young men were having a real hard time with the idea of them being great.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, it really caught me off guard because usually like high school students are kind of like, you know, they got a little swagger to them and all this. But we just happened to be in a room with a group of men where they like, these guys were like crying because they couldn't see the greatness inside of themselves. Could you imagine being a teenager and not being able to see your greatness? And so one of the things that I think has been happening through this pandemic, wow, there goes the picture from yesterday. Yeah. One of the things that's been happening in this pandemic is that people are having to deal with themselves a lot more than they were before. Like before, you know, even now, you know, you think you can just get on TikTok and do all that kind of stuff. But when you've been separated, you know, virtual school, you're like stuck in the house, whatever issues that are going on in your house, you're still in the house with it. And so there's been an uptick, I believe, of depression. I believe there's an uptick of drug use. I believe there's an uptick. You know, a number of the kids in there talk about how they smoke weed because people are trying to escape their reality. They don't want to deal with their reality. And so they like, keep in mind, you know, in our supportive housing programs, which is primarily males, we work with young people who have like who are dual diagnosed. That means that they might have bipolar disorder, and they also may have be like a serious drug user. So we're not just talking about smoking weed. We're talking about, you know, smoking crack. And so it's like we work with young people all the time who are hearing voices, who are dealing with those kinds of things and trying to get through it. So, but that's like the highest level of care, you know. So I was very surprised to go into a school and hear the amount of how low these young people were feeling about themselves. And I was like, it was almost like I had to convince them that there was greatness inside of them, that there was something inside of them that they hadn't even tapped into, you know, who they are, who they had the potential to be. And it just was surprising to me that you know, I'm dealing with the kids with that severe mental illness, and we're working with them every day, and we understand that they have some, you know, they might see themselves a certain way. But these were young men that were in normal high school, and they were having similar issues, not necessarily the voices and stuff like that, but the depression and feeling low and not feeling competent and not feeling their best selves. I just thought that was amazing.
Wow.
Wow.
That I don't know. That experience is crazy because, like you said, most kids in high school. I know in high school I thought I was going to the league. I know Daryl, if he's anything like he is today, he probably thought he was he was the god of the
I just knew I was going to be a social agitator. That was my goal in high school. I did it in college. That's just been my life. It's stir pot. So, but and it's so crazy because we talk about mental health or mental health security. It's kind of like, I think the most critical piece, out of everything you heard, I think the piece I got out of is you engage them. I mean, you guys engage them in a way in which people typically don't. Looking on the sites as you look up, like, what's happening with mental health in the Black community. I just seen it. Where is it? They talked about. Okay, I lost the percentage, but they said typically majority of Blacks who are surveyed report bouts of sadness, depression, confusion. There's all these descriptors, and I'm just like, wow, because there's times when you down and you don't know what's going on. What do? We put that. My son does it. Puts a smile on his face, no matter what's going on. It's like, I'm good. You just came from, your appointment. Yo, Abdul, how you doing? I'm good.
Yeah.
And we're not good.
We're not good.
So when somebody talks to me about my potential and how good I am, to this point, as old as I am now, and somebody says, yo, man, you're really good at that. I still head go down. Can't do the compliments.
Yeah, you didn't even text me back. I said that in January 1st. Still waiting.
I'm not good with that. Which is not too much different than what he's talking about with those young brothers. It's kind of like you convince yourself you can do things, but you don't convince yourself that you're great. You don't convince yourself that you belong here, or that, when I'm sitting at a table, my thing is I'm here to prove a point. I'm here to get work done. But you never address the fact that, man, I'm kind of combative because I'm like, I know they don't want me at this table.
Right.
And that pushes back on me. So that could have been me at that little all-white high school in Meriden, Connecticut, had you came in and you're telling us, you're great.
Right.
When every other indicator says that you're not.
Right. Yeah, I think that one of the things that we've seen also is that there's been an uptick in people's willingness to go get help, to go get therapy. Right now, like you said, it's like the buzzword right now, Black men's health. Any mental health is like the buzzword right now. I mean, I posted that flyer for the panel we're going to be doing. It's next month, right?
March 10th. Yep.
Okay, 2 months from now. So, but it's been like people are like sharing it all over the place, right? Because people are. I think more than any other time in my career, people were more open to go talk to a therapist than any other time before. It's almost like it's cool to go talk to, like, do you have a therapist? Yeah. Have you talked to your therapist this week? Because people are recognizing it's not normal to bottle everything up inside of them and deal with it themselves. I always tell, like, my whole selling point for therapy is like, you could go into that therapy session and absolutely blow somebody's mind. You could tell them whatever you want to tell them, and they're not going to think you're crazy. They're not going to tell you can't say it. They're going to help you work through whatever it is you go in there and tell them. And so why not go into therapy? So people, I think, right now are more open to it than any other time before.
Right. And it's crazy. We have major Black athletes. The tennis pro, I forgot her name. Yo, I need a mental health break. We got ball players. I need a mental health break. Everybody's talking about Antonio Brown.
Right.
Oh, he's losing his mind. No, he needed a mental health break. He was dealing with some things, and he was just, you get to the point you're tired of being tired and you break. Talking about the panel, we have Laurent Mclean, former two-time NFL, Pro Bowler. Mm-hmm. His big thing over the last 10 years since he left the league has been, we got to address mental health. He talked about how his career was cut short because issues he didn't deal with. People just called him crazy, not realizing, no, he was okay, but he was dealing with all these stressors and didn't seek out, therapy. So we got, celebrities who are talking about this on a regular basis, which I think helps the case. We have academics who are now addressing it, And we even have some elected officials who have finally stopped calling our kids criminals and saying, nah, man, we're dealing with mental health issues.
Right, right. Well, it's coming from so many different directions. You know, think about it. So I was thinking about, like, when I was in high school, there was no social media where I could go on a phone at any given time and look at somebody who's better at everything than me. Like, at any given time, these kids can swipe into their phones and they see somebody who's faster, who's stronger, who looks better, who dressed better, whatever it is they think they want. You know, and it's bombarding them all. And it's not just the kids; it's all of them. It's like bombarding us all the time. And so I believe that, you know, like 2 years ago, even like I started catching myself where there would be times where I would start feeling down. And so I started creating these like cards. Like, I took a box of index cards and I would just write a little positive note on the card for myself. And then when I would come into my office every day, I would go through my deck of cards. And so and it would be like all positive affirmations and different things. And so we have to create alternatives to, you know, social media and being on the internet, and kind of like that brain fog that happens because we've kind of like gone into this so much, and we've kind of like, it's always like this comparison. And I'm talking out like from my level of thinking. I think what is happening is that we get in this comparison, and so we always want to be like somebody else. Yeah. And we start losing ourselves.
Yeah.
And I hear that, but what about, all right, I'm a 60s baby. So I go back to, what'd you say, Justin?
Nothing, go ahead.
Watch that, young man. Watch your mouth, young man. I go back to when I was young. There was cats, we were like, yo, that dude's just crazy. You know, even back then, before social media, before, you know, back when cable was literally click, 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 click on the TV set, we still had, you know, we found ways of creating coping skills. You know, mine, I started getting down. The first thing I do, I'm like, all right, I gotta get up, get out there. Let me have an event. Let me put together this. Let me do it. And I just work my way through it until I'm back to normal. So other folks acted out in different ways. So I hear what you're saying about the social media, not even debating it, because with this young generation, that's what they're dealing with. Yeah. Oh, what do we do with the older brothers and sisters in the community who have been going through this stuff? It's like so hard pressed inside them. They've been dealing with this since the 70s, 80s, 90s. You know, it's like, what do we do with them? Because they impact the development of our young people as well.
Yeah. So that's kind of why I created, and specifically for men, right? I created the manhood tree. The curriculum, it kind of like I feel like it's an easy entryway to be able to deal with some of your stuff. You know, I say that in the manhood tree, we talk about the 6 hoods: boyhood, teen and young adulthood, neighborhood, brotherhood, fatherhood, and manhood. And so, and what we do is we recognize that there's in some people's lives, not everybody's life, when we start talking about boyhood, we start talking about trauma, right? Some of our early trauma happened in our boyhood. Some of our early trauma, you know, we have a session on roots. Some of the trauma that happened to us happened before we were even born. We come into this world based on our ancestors, our family history. We already got trauma. You think about your neighborhood you grow up in. Yeah. The neighborhood is something that's totally out of our control, right? And if you're brought up in whatever neighborhood, you gotta fight right there, day one. That's trauma. And so the first half of the manhood tree is unpacking some of that trauma for some people, because not everybody grew up in a bad neighborhood. Not everybody has roots, but it's important for men to be able to be at the table and hear other people's stories and hear their stories and be able to express it freely and not be seen as crazy and not be seen as weak. You know, that's the other thing with men is like, if you share what you feel, you might be seen as weak. And so it's like we give the freedom for people to be able to do that. The other thing I wanted to say is that to your point, you keep kind of going back to, the other people with more severe mental health. I think in the past we didn't know how to identify it, right? So we just labeled everybody that wasn't doing the same thing as everyone else as crazy. And now I think we're a little bit more savvy with the understanding of diagnosis, the understanding of how trauma actually impacts people. So like, when people were coming back from Vietnam and different things like that, you talk about the 60s and the 70s and how that impacts them. And then even, the thing about mental health, many of the diagnoses that we talk about, they don't come up. They don't show themselves until you're in your 20s. Right. So like when you're a kid, you have diagnoses like attention deficit disorder, oppositional defiant disorder. But those diagnoses for children turn into bipolar disorder, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder. These things, they so basically, unless you do something when you're little, they keep advancing. They become more complex as you get older.
And you talked about it, and D alluded to it, but the word I think I want to bring up is tools. What are the tools for people like to help cope with some of their traumas and mental health issues? If you can just give an example of maybe somebody that's dealing with, we see kids with opposition defiance, which I don't, I'm not really well versed in, because in my mind it's like, no, you need a beating. You know how we do it. Like you need me for 2 days. But like somebody with a young child with opposition defiance disorder that graduates to being an adult, right?
Yeah.
And now some of the tools they can use to help with those issues.
So let's go back to the beating first. So I'm a regular black person, right? And I used to be, I used to get whoopings when I was a kid, right? And so one of the things you gotta look at discipline. The way we discipline our children is like the door for that trauma. So I've never met so if you get in a group of black people, right? We will do the trauma Olympics faster than anybody that you know. We will talk about, oh man, I used to get beat with an extension cord.
That ain't nothing.
I got the switch. And so it's like we're gonna outdo each other in how bad we were abused, how bad we were mistreated by our parents, right? And so we're so resilient that we don't realize that all the things we're talking about are the traumas that leads to the way, like our inability to deal with problems in the right way. And the worst thing that we do is we continue to do the same thing to our children. And so as my kids are all teenagers now. And one of the things that I had to learn, this is a learned behavior. This is a tool that I had to put on myself, is that I'm not going to discipline my children the way I was disciplined. I'm going to learn how to talk to my children, because I'm preparing them to go out in the world and be able to stand up straight and be able to communicate. And I'm not going to beat whatever it is that's going on with them out of them. And I think it was one of the best things that I ever could do. So I just wanted to, I always, whenever I'm talking to black people, we start doing our trauma Olympics. I always want to stop us and bring us back to, anybody listening to this podcast, do not beat your children. Talk to your children. Communicate with your children. Stop laying hands on your children. Just because it happened to you, there are better ways to parent your children. So I just have to say that.
But here's the deal. If you spoil the rod, you spoil the child. Now, everybody heard that. I heard that before. Oh, man, you spoiling your kids. You need to beat that child, huh? Yep. So it doesn't really spoil a child, correct?
No.
Your professional opinion.
In my professional opinion, and you guys have your own opinion on this, what whooping did you get that made you a great person? What whooping did you get that taught you the lesson? Like, this is the whooping that changed my life. I cannot remember one whooping I got. I tell you, I love my parents so much. When my parents talked to me, when my parents talked to me, I felt so bad about the things that I did. By the time I was 10, 11 years old, I would rather get the whooping because I didn't want them to talk to me. The whooping's quick and dirty, you know? We're going to get in there, we're going to get this whooping, and I'm going to be good to go. I'm back on the streets. But if they talk to me, if they give me consequences where I got to stay in my room, I got to write something, I got to think about what I did, then that's a lot of work. And so we have to teach our kids how to communicate, how to, like we're not going to beat it out of them.
Listen.
This is my opinion.
Nah, man, listen. I would take any of those whoopings any day. Those long lectures. And like my mom was a Pentecostal preacher, so we didn't only get the lectures, but we got long Bible sermons. So I'd rather you go ahead and whoop me. I got to a point where the whoopings didn't hurt anyway.
Exactly.
But you're right. It's those lectures, and then they ask you all these open-ended questions that make you think, and you don't want to think as a kid. So you're right. We don't talk about that during the Trauma Olympics. Folks need to talk about the lectures they were run from.
And it's so important because one of the pivotal moments in my life when I was about to go to college and I was a subpar student and I was a decent athlete, but my aunt and my mom, who are from Grenada, and they said, "What are you gonna do with your life? Like, can you offer?"
Right.
I was like, "Dang!" Like that, boom, changed. They were always like that, though. You know what I mean? And then being around astute people in my family, it was like, yeah, well, we do this in this family. I don't know what you're going to do, but you need to do something soon. And my mom said, you have two options. You go to college or you leave the house.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so that was those conversations changed everything. And what I think is the tools that, because I have two. I have one that's crying. I'm going to start screaming in a second. A newborn, and I have a 2-year-old that's real sassy.
Mm-hmm.
D got a three juggernaut girls over there that the talking it takes a while. You know what I mean? They be over my house, and you gotta talk to Zuri. You gotta talk to Zuri like Zuri. You know what I mean? And then same thing with my daughter. It's like it works though. And my wife is gone, so I can say it. But like, it works because even D, when he speaks, they listen.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. You know what I mean? And it's something about being a man that helps as well. But it's the tone, the everything that listen and the follow through.
Yeah,
is important as well. But yeah, I think that we suffer from that. Like, and I need people, and you need to drive at home, and you're doing a good job of driving at home, that those beatings did not elicit great behaviors because I still got in trouble in school. And so, yeah. But and for now, pivoting to more like grown, older adults that are still like, and I see it today, that are still suffering from what I call the victim mentality. You know what I mean? Like still blaming everybody else for their problems and feeling that the world's against them. And I'm not saying that they're not right in that at all. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But what are some tools you can help with those individuals? Or what would you kind of group those individuals? I don't know if they have a term in your profession.
Somebody with a victim mentality?
And people that feel like the world is against them. And I didn't know a lot of people were like that. I know me and D don't really think like that. We like bring the world on. Let's go. Me and D, we communicate like that. It's like, let's go. I want all the world to come at me. And so I didn't realize a lot of people are suffering from that, which I see. I don't know how to die. I don't know what that is.
That's not that. I don't know if that's a diagnosis. I think that's a state of mind, right? So that's really like somebody who is not accepting responsibility for their life. Like they're not saying they don't feel that they're in control of their life. So they blame somebody else for it. So that's not necessarily something to diagnose, but that's something that these are some things that you can still access therapy about. You can work on yourself in therapy. Everything with therapy isn't about like I said, there's levels of mental health. And so you can go as simple as I need somebody to talk to you're hearing voices. So there's a very long spectrum when you talk about, but I think that, for people who are unable to kind of like accept that they are the person that is the reason why they're not moving to where they want to get to. They're the reason why they're not moving forward in their life the way they would like to. I think that requires more support from maybe like a group than instead of just hearing it from a therapist, because there's a certain amount of confrontation you might want to do with someone, but if they're coming to you for help, you don't want to just be like, the problem is you every week, and so it's really kind of like helping them to see it for themselves, because that's the thing about all of these modalities is at the end of the day, you can meet with somebody as long as you want. They can go to group, they can do all this stuff, but until they see they want to make the change in themselves, until they make those baby steps, they're not going to be able to do anything that makes a difference.
Wow, that's so. For everybody out there in our listening audience, we'll be playing this tape this show all week long. We all know 5, 6, 7 people like that. I'm so tired of hearing about, for even my own brother, I'm tired of hearing what my mom and dad did to prevent you from growing. So if you're watching this, go get a therapist and a support group. Yeah. And the good thing is it's okay to do that now. And again, and I'm glad you said it earlier, you stressed it, you don't have to be hearing voices and seeing people walking through the house that aren't really there. It's simple things that learning to deal with your own reality, learning to deal with your own critical thinking errors, and just learning to own it, man. You learn to own and take personal responsibility. And it sounds like a simple, non-challenging thing to do, but if you've never done it and no one's ever kind of challenged you to do that, you won't do it. So, and I'm professional. I'm just my observations. Go ahead.
Yeah. I think a lot of I'm not lying, because I'm around a lot of people that are older than me, and I've seen that a lot, and I've seen it in fatherhood, especially, like just that mentality, and it creates kind of dissension within the family, and then we lose a father in the family. I've seen it like over and over and over again, and so how I speak isn't for everybody, right? And I'm a young father, so I don't know all their trials and tribulations and all their traumas, but I think one of the things that you are doing that is one of the most needed things is, somebody told me one day, who's going to teach me how to be 65? Right. And what they meant by that was, who's going to mentor me at this stage of my life?
Yeah.
Right. And if you could kind of but expand upon like the importance of mentorship, because that's what you're doing as well, in large part.
Well, I used to run a pretty big mentoring program. When I first started My People, we had a mentoring program. And so I believe at every phase of your life, it's good to be able to have an example, right? A mentor that could be able to, that you can pattern yourself off of, someone you can be able to say like, that's why fathers are so important, right? So that's why we go back to the whole thing about, whoopings and stuff. You talk about fear, right? So whoopings put a certain amount of fear in you, and we don't want that. You want to be able to have examples. So like a lot of young men, when you get into your 20s and stuff like that, I think that, you can reach out to somebody who's at a different phase of life than you are, and you can learn some things from them. You can sit down and have some conversations with them, and be able to propel yourself further in a conversation than you could in a year. Right? If you talk to the right person, you might get some information in one conversation that you would have never figured out on your own. And so it's really like, I think that was why I went to that event yesterday, because I just wanted to be in a room, and you never know when you're going to hear a good message from somebody. And so maybe nobody in there was going to be my mentor, but I feel like, I'm constantly seeking out positive affirmations. I'm constantly seeking out knowledge from other people that have more than me in a topic or something like that. And so we can't be afraid to try to make ourselves better. This is what we're talking about. We talk about mental health. We're trying to have better mental health. We want our mind to be clear. We want our mind to be open. We want our mind to feel good. And so the reason why, you go to the therapist, the reason why you have your mentors is to be able to kind of clear your mind of all the fogginess that is holding you back from having your greatest potential. So that's really what we're trying to do is, we're trying to be able to unpack and then allow like the trauma to go away. So that's not kind of like holding you down. Like I talk to people about the baggage. I said, if you could actually see the baggage that people are walking around with, like some people are carrying so much stuff that like they've been dealing with for their whole lives. And so like they got all this baggage. And the thing is that we want to be able to help people to unload some of that baggage. You don't need to continue to be living, your 10-year-old when you were bullied. You don't have to keep living it. You can let that baggage go. You can move forward and be able to do something different. And so that's the thing about mental health is that we're really just trying to clear out the mind and be able to allow you to be able to see things a lot more like focus.
And for all those folks who are just now tuning in, we're on with Abdul Rahman Muhammad. He's the executive director and founder of the multi-dimensional social service agency, My People Clinical Services. Founded back in March of 2005, offers an array of services. So he's talking about the services that they offer, but at the same time, he's giving us a real dope perspective on what's happening within our communities and within our families in terms of mental health. I'm gonna say lifestyle challenges, those transitional values that we push from one generation to another. To an extent, we still pushing some of the things that we left those slave plantations with. Am I right or wrong? I mean, we talk about those whoopings. I'm gonna whoop the black off you. Right. A lot of that stuff is slave stuff. I mean, how we view the world, what we say we can and cannot do. I mean, this is when you talk about that whole crab in the barrel bucket thing. A lot of that stuff are, when you talk about baggage, man, we've been carrying that stuff. I'm still carrying my great-grandfather's baggage sometimes. I'm like, yo, great-great-granddaddy, can you come and get this stuff?
That's right. Let it go. You can drop it right now. Mark, go ahead and just drop it off, man. You got enough of your own stuff. Let your great-grandfather's stuff go. Go ahead, man. It's okay. So you see, it becomes like it's deep because when you really think about it, I don't doubt that you're carrying that baggage. I don't doubt it one bit. Like so as a people, it becomes one of those things where we are viewed as strong because we're carrying that baggage. Like that's the thing that we're always in this position where it's like the harder things are, that becomes the thing we want to be able to say, like, look at me, man. I'm carrying baggage from 100 years ago in my life. I'm still doing stuff they've been doing 100 years ago. Like when you think about it, like even like when we talk about anything, if you were still doing something from 100 years ago, we're talking to each other on a computer. This is like the most up-to-date technology you could think, and we still doing something somebody was doing 100 years ago. It's just crazy. And so we gotta let that stuff go because that's the only way we could be able to move forward. There's more for us in our future, more greatness, more ability, more we just gotta let a lot of this stuff go. That trauma is just holding us down. We gotta let it go. I'll get my thing real quick.
Go for it.
Yeah, and he discussed something that I don't think people get, or like maybe you're gonna have to expand upon it so people know that this is trauma, because we think, no, that's just tests and trials and tribulations. You know what I mean? Right. On the pulpit, we still there, and it messed me up because, like, I had said something to somebody one time. I was like, yeah, this happened to me when I was a kid. They said, what? I was like, yeah. Like, I was just like, you know how you just be talking and you think other black people have just went through everything you've went through. And this black person was more not privileged. I didn't have a father growing up. You know what I mean? So most of the time I'm around older men because subconsciously I'm trying to find knowledge of like, yo, dad, like help me. I don't know what I'm doing around here. You gotta help me some way.
Right.
And so can you kind of expand upon what trauma is, or give examples to what trauma is? And because we think it's just things what God has given you and you will get through. Hallelujah. You know what I mean?
Yo.
Yeah.
Trauma.
Thank you.
Trauma could be anything that is so imagine, okay, so trauma is anything that has an adverse effect on your ability to operate in the world. So trauma can be something as simple as somebody slams the door, BAM! And that makes you go, you get scared of it, right? So imagine if you went right now, you got those two little babies in there, and every day you just slam the door, BAM! That would have an impact on them, right? It would have a traumatic impact on those babies, right? And so that has an adverse effect on, and so now let's add on top of that trauma. Slam the door, bow! And then you come in there and you start yelling at your wife. What the hell? You ain't got my dinner, blah, 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 blah. And then you decide you want to hit your wife. Bow! Okay. So now if I'm a 2-year-old, this is something that's going in my mind. My mind's not even developed yet.
Right? And you won't forget it. Trust me.
So you are developing their mind to be fear. Like, so boom, the door slams, the yelling, the arguing, the hitting. That's all. That's one kind of trauma. It has an adverse effect on the development of a person. So if you have consistent traumas, all these traumas. So every time you have a trauma, it's building on top of your other traumas, right? And so you got all these traumas building on top. So the more trauma someone has, the more that they are likely to have a diagnosable disorder, right? Because you can only take so much. Your mental health can only take so much. So now what happens? You ever heard of multi-personality disorder? I've never met anybody with that, but you say, well, how does that happen? Well, it happens because people have to escape from themselves, right? Because there's so much trauma in this place, I got to create another place for me to go to be able to be safe. And I got to create another personality over here. So that's somebody with immense trauma. That's why they do those things. And so that's an extreme example of it, right?
Or they self-medicate.
Self-medicate. I want to get out of here. So I'm going to take this. You think about it. All the people that are smoking weed, right? They think they're smoking weed because it's just being cool. No, they don't want to be in their current situation. So they want to kind of like cool out. They want to fade out of what's going on. See what I'm saying? And so sometimes, and the thing is, it becomes in our community, it becomes like acceptable, it becomes like the norm. So everybody's doing it, but nobody's addressing the why. So why do we all smoke this weed? Why do we all drink all of this stuff? Why are we drinking and smoking? What? That's built up trauma, and people are trying to find, an escape for it in their lives.
Right. Absolutely. I'm so glad you said that. The time is, we got about 10 minutes left. Yeah, we got you coming back on because I need you to explain something for me. Let's see. Talk about this chart if you could see it. Boom.
Yes. The manhood tree.
Yep.
Yeah, that's just basically we have a number of initiatives that we do, and those are the initiatives of the manhood tree. And one of the things that we're trying to show is that it's all connected. So what I try to do is once somebody can enter the manhood tree at any of these levels. But once you get in, we want to be able to say, hey, you're a part of our group. Maybe you want to come and do a fatherhood monologue. You can continue to be a part of what we're doing. Hey, you're a part of the fatherhood monologues. Maybe you should come with us on the male conference. We're going to go travel to another country for a few days. You come with us and we're going to have some conversations and together. So all of the initiatives, what we're trying to do, and I like to do this like on the slide. I'm really creating like a support network, support group for men where they don't have to think about the fact that we are I'm not calling it a support group. I'm just calling it the manhood tree. I'm just saying, like, we building. If you think about a tree is always growing, right? And it has branches off to the side. And so what I'm just trying to do is provide men with outlets that allow for them to be able to get support, to connect with people they may not connect with. That's why I was saying to you, D. Moss, I really wanted to get up to Springfield because I feel like we got a good group forming here in Connecticut, but I would love to be able to expand it out because I think that
Can you change the language and say we are expanding it out? And I don't want to be in Springfield, but we will be in Springfield. Okay, we have to change the language a little bit, all right? Because you're going to be here. You're already here. The door is open. So Go ahead. I'll let you finish. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I just really want to be able to help men to really be their best self, and that comes to like I do a lot of work with fathers, and I think that a lot of times in the social work field, people like to deal with fathers, but they don't like to deal with men. I'll say it again.
Yeah, say it again.
They like to deal with fathers, but they don't like to deal with men. And so if men start being if father starts being too much of a man, they don't really want to deal with that.
I'm sorry. Hold up. Can you just my hearing? Can you say that one more time?
Well, like people like the idea of fatherhood. They like that. It sounds good. But they don't want to deal with necessarily a man. They don't want to deal with the manhood. And so a lot of our programs are focused on fatherhood, right? We want people to be better fathers and all that. But the thing is this, fatherhood is under manhood. If you are a good man, if you can get together, right? If I got my full manhood together, I'm going to be a great father. If I got my full manhood together, my relationships. So people don't recognize one of the sessions in the manhood tree is relationships. And in that we talk about how, relationships are with our children, right? Relationships are with our spouse. Relationships are with our friends. And most importantly, relationships are with ourselves.
Yeah.
So if you are a man, you got all these different types of relationships. You might be having a great relationship. A lot of times we have great relationships with other men, brothers, our brotherhood, right? We have great relationships with men, but we don't have great relationship with women because we don't have the same respect and acknowledgement of women, so we treat them we have this man concept where men are better than women. Men are the runner. Like they want to say, I run the house, but they don't do the things that you got to do to run the house. It's like manhood is a very complex thing. And I think a lot of times we don't want to deal with it. We don't talk about it. And we don't hold other men to that accountability. We allow men to walk around and act like manhood is having a bunch of kids and all, doing all the things that are the negative things about manhood. We don't allow for us to talk about the things that are the positive attributes of manhood that we should be holding as a standard for manhood. So,
wow,
I'm trying to, put that out there because you can't hang out with me, right? And be a bum father and a bum man. You can't. I'm not.
Thank you.
Word.
Listen, I don't listen. I'm sorry to cut you. I don't get it. And I'm gonna just not go too hard. In my experience in life, I've always had to check people, and I used to be like, I look at the older generation. I'm like, why am I checking somebody older than me about how they operate as a father? I'm like, yo, you're never around your kids. Like why am I like? You mean and why? And I just never understood why. And I always got mad at your generation. I'm not gonna lie. I used to get so frustrated. I'm like, I'm not supposed to talk to this person. And I never always asked them. I always used to ask this question when I used to have different experiences with different men. And they'd have different issues with women or whatever. I'd be like, nobody's ever told you have a problem, like you have an issue. And they'd be like, no. I'm like, you're 50 years old. You don't think you have an issue? Or nobody has told you have an issue. And I've always got upset because I was like, I shouldn't be the one saying this because I don't know You know what I mean? I'm only 30 and you're 20 years my older, and there should have been some kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Some checks and balances there.
So
But
what happens is this: men have their priorities out of order. So we are easy, like it's easy to be like to have a brotherhood, right? Like if I can at any time I could call some of my friends from college, right? And I can become 18 again in a almost a second. And usually when you get with men, that's the thing is like we can always be our lower level selves. Like we can find that very easily. And some men don't ever get out of that. They never allow themselves to grow. So you have when I talk about the Manor tree, I'm always talking about like a tree. And so what I'm trying to be is like one of those damn trees. What's the name of that tree that's out there in California, the real big ones? The redwood, the redwood tree. It's really big, but we got men that are out here that are like, little twig trees because they're just because you can have sex and you can talk loud and all of those things, that doesn't make you a man. So it's kind of like you have to reprioritize manhood. You have to be able to say, no, this is the standard of manhood that we're going for right now. And so when as the man, I want to be around other men who are, aspirational, who are trying to do things with their life, that are trying to uplift our community. There's a lot of men that they don't have that. That's not what they're doing. So we created this because it's really trying to be able to allow men to help men to get to be able to put manhood first, and then everything else will fall in line behind that.
But isn't that like, when you talk about trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma? So to Justice's point, just because I'm in my 50s doesn't mean I ever broke that cycle, which means I'm still repeating everything that I seen my father do, grandfather, great-grandfather. I'm carrying that baggage. So just because you come along and you're like, in your late 20s and you're schooling me, age, just because you're old, being old doesn't make you wise. It doesn't make you any more learned if you haven't taken the time to heal yourself.
Right.
And break that cycle and do things a little bit differently. It's like we learned on the playground when we're young. The coolest dude in the crew, the dude that really run the crew, is typically the most unlearned dude in the whole crew. He's not good in school. He's not the greatest athlete. He's just the toughest kid. Right. So everybody rocks with him. So that kid goes from being 10 with nobody checking him because he's cool to 15 to 35 to 45. I don't know how many times we've heard cats reliving their childhood. Yo, back in my glory days, I used to knock cats out. Well, brother, you 45, 50. Why are you still thinking about that?
Because they don't have any new experiences to add into their repertoire. They don't have anything else to talk about. So so you go to what is easiest, right? So this is when they were at their height. So you make a great point. Time don't make you, it's just some people are not going to even reach out and get the help and support they need. But one of the things, and I know we're getting close to wrapping up, and so I just want to say this. A self-assessment, right, is something that we can all do. If there's anybody that's listening that doesn't feel like they are where they would like to be, maybe you reach out and you get some therapy. Maybe you join a group. But because the greatest thing about life is that every day we get a shot at trying to become better. That's the great thing about waking up tomorrow is that whatever I didn't do well at today, I got another shot tomorrow. And so that the greatest thing about being human is that we have the ability to change. And so my hope is that maybe you heard something in this call today, this podcast today, and maybe you want to do some of that change. And we all know it's going to be some work, but that's the whole point is that you got to put in the work to get the change.
All right.
And I want to just touch on one last thing. I know that we at literally an hour. And it's metaphysical, you know what I mean? And whatever happens in the mental will manifest in the body. And what a lot of men don't understand is high blood pressure, diabetes, and hypertension, which is same thing, but and heart disease and all these things can be byproducts of trauma and reliving trauma daily, right? And what people call triggers. our body stores tension, right, through the use of hormones, and our hormones elicit responses that make us always do like this when we see another black man. I was just walking and I had my fist balled up because the dude was walking too close to me and I didn't see where his hands were. I'm not even gonna lie to you. And I was ready. Like I was like, I'm gonna have to hit him. You know what I mean? Because how he was walking was just funny to me.
Right.
That's from living in a neighborhood in which you had to keep your hands up and everything was, you know what I mean? And so what happens in your body, it will elicit a response. And then with stress, what happens is we have cortisol, adrenaline, all these hormones. What happens is our body keeps them on at all times, even when we don't want them on.
That's
And
right.
that becomes a reoccurring theme. And then we see diabetes, we see, and people are like, that doesn't make any sense. I could, we already talked about diabetes. I don't want to get into it, but we see diabetes, we see hypertension, we see autoimmune diseases, which now they're saying are as a result from traumatic situations, which include lupus, Crohn's, and the list goes on. So we got to really understand that what happens in the mental, and if it's not taken care of, will manifest in the physical.
Okay. Wow. Any comment, Abdul, before we call it a night?
I'll just say I agree.
Sounds like a plan to me. All right, Justin, you're closed. Thank you, gentlemen. I learned quite a few things today that I can carry around with me. And for everybody in the Springfield area, please know that you're going to be seeing, back in the day, we've seen them a lot on the ice cream truck, paying for people's dreams in front of the Martin Luther King Center on Rutland Street. I think you've been up here a couple of times.
Yeah.
This time he's going to be up with the manhood tree, man. There's so many things that folks can get involved in. I know that there are activities happening. Shout out to Joe Dumpson with Steel Sharpen Steel every other Sunday. Dope program, great support group. This ain't competitions, not replacing anything. It's just an additional resource that you'll have. I have a couple of guys who said that they're interested in the man tree, the monologues. I'm like, yo, look, man, here's what's going on. It gives you an opportunity to get a lot of stuff off your chest, put it in paper, and you learn how to share it with the world. That was my sales pitch. There's a couple of things. I know we're going to have you back on a few more times on this show and then on the Monday night show so folks can, really get familiar with the work that he's doing. It's brilliant. It's brilliant work. And I'm not saying it because, I've known him for years. It's just brilliant work. And man, listen, man, it's all about Black health. And
listen, I'm cutting you off, D, because guess what? Me and you, we're all about action. Me and D, we'll start an event in 4 seconds. That's what. Don't give us too many time with each other because we'll have 20 events by the end of the night. And so, but this is important because a lot of people have come. We have a gym here, and a lot of people will come to. I know they came to D and they came to us. It's like, why don't you start a group? And even in that space, I was like, I'm not trying to do that. I'm tired. Like, and I'm not. I don't feel like I'm equipped right now. I don't. You know what I mean? To give energy and stuff like that. But God has led us to this conversation, and I think that we have the space. You give us a date, and I think whatever program you see fit. I would like to start off with something simple. Laconia does a women's circle, men's circle, something that's easy. For us, but you already have a whole bunch. You have the manhood tree. You got a whole bunch of stuff. I'm doing simplistic stuff. I'm like, let's get together and sit down and talk. You got a whole program. So I want to open up the gym to that in Springfield as a space. And as soon as next month, I'm gonna put the pressure on you, Abdul.
Hey,
I'm serious.
You give me
you gave me a timeline. You said as soon as next month, but I'm not putting pressure on you. Next month is next week.
Have
Black History Month, and everybody want to be black right now. Let's be black, competent men now. Let's do that.
I have availability on Saturdays and Sundays. So if you want, we can set up a group Saturday morning, and I'll be
easy.
10
Guess
o'clock.
what?
You know what I'm saying?
Got it. I got a date for you already because we got the drum circle on the 26th, I think is a Friday. So the 28th, which is the last Sunday of February. We'll make that happen. We'll just put together. We got it. We got your number. I can get it through D, and we're gonna make that happen.
Hit me up. Let's make something happen. I'm
easy,
man. It's not. I ain't got nobody holding me back. I just
same here. None of us. All three of us. Shackles is gone.
Man. Yeah, I'm free, man. I just show up.
Yeah. So I'm definitely gonna hit you up. It needs to happen. It needs to happen soon. So for sure.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. This is Black Health. Let's talk about it. We'll be back next Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Listen, man, if you don't do nothing else during the course of your life, man, talk about your health. There's nothing more important. You can have all the money in the world and be sickly for the rest of your life. Get your health together. There are things you can do to manage it. And it's on you. With that being said, much love, much peace. Black Health, Justin Yard, D Moss, and our guest, Abdul Rahman Muhammad. The brother of one of my most favorite people in the whole world. I had to throw it out there. And we'll see y'all. Peace.
Peace.